So why is it that speaking Spanish is so difficult? You've learned the language, you have an understanding what it is, and then you go to speak and you open the mouth, the words don't flow. This is a common problem, and there's a host of reasons why it's uniquely different and difficult, and people struggle with that. But there's a fundamental concept, and this is what today's video is going to be all about, which is to how you frame this challenge of speaking, how you think about the challenge associated with that. If you can properly frame it and think of it in the right way, I can assure you, then you can build a strategy to address those challenges. My name is Scott Bryant. Soy el fundador, el creador del método Calisthán. I'm the founder and creator of the Calisthán method. It's all about addressing the challenges of speaking Spanish. And so this concept that I'm describing here is fundamental to the way I've thought and learned about these challenges. And the idea, and you saw it in the title of this video, is that speaking is a skill. A skill is different than knowledge. Learn the language requires knowledge. You have to train a skill to speak. And that is what we're going to dig into today, in depth. So get ready. Here we go. Let's do it. So it might be appropriate as we dive into this topic to just start with a simple definition. And I'm going to actually read something. Read the formal definition from Merriam-Webster for that of a skill. The definition of a skill, it says, the ability to use one's knowledge effectively and readily in execution or performance. Y para los hispanohablantes ahí en la audiencia, la capacidad de utilizar el propio conocimiento de manera eficaz y rápida en la ejecución o el desempeño. So, there you go. In the definition of the word skill, you find the word knowledge. It's your ability to use one's knowledge effectively and rapidly in execution or performance. So we're going to now dig into the differences between those two worlds. And hopefully this will make sense as to, again, how we can build a strategy to address the unique challenges of speaking. So let's start with knowledge. And how do we gain knowledge? We do it through study. And we all understand this. And we've all spent our time sitting in a classroom learning Spanish. There's other ways to do that. Of course, there's language learning apps today. There's videos. There's all kinds of means of accessing a lot of free, amazing content to teach you about Spanish, the grammar, the structure, some vocabulary, how to pronounce things. It's all the rules and regulations and the algebra associated with gaining knowledge. And when you think of this concept of acquiring knowledge, I'd like you to think of that of a student. You're a student, you're studying. You're acquiring it via study as a student. How do you test yourself? How do we know if we've mastered the content, if we have the knowledge of the subject? We take tests, we take exams. All of this, when you think about it, a lot of it nothing's real time. It's all slow paced. You can imagine yourself going at your own pace, pausing, thinking, you're writing, you're reading. It's an absolute requirement for speaking. You cannot speak if you don't understand the structure, the grammar, and all those things I've described. So I don't want to minimize the importance of it, but to be clear, this approach, what I'm focused on, I'm assuming that's there and or can be acquired. I think there's an insane level of resources available to acquire knowledge these days. A lot of it freely available. If I look at YouTube and the lessons and the details that are provided, it's crazy to me how good the content is to acquire the knowledge. It's why people, I think, spend years and years studying Duolingo. They do their things. They enjoy the little task of doing so. You may be one of them. Those things are super cool. It's great. You acquire this knowledge. But then you can't speak. Why? Because it's a whole different animal. We'll get into that right now. Okay, so now let's move over to skill. Different animal. How do we acquire a skill? We train for it. Think of it as a physical act, it requires neural connections and you're executing something physically. in the form of speaking. You can think of a lot of different ways that people perform skills. It could be musicians, it could be actors, it could be politicians delivering a speech, it could be someone on stage at a play or some performance. It could be a cook in a kitchen putting together their ingredients to create something anew. It could be an artist, but think of that, it's altogether different. To acquire a skill, we must train for it. To acquire knowledge, we study. In fact, think of skill acquisition as someone that has left the classroom. They're no longer in the quiet confines of their classroom, writing down exercises, reading, studying. They've left, they've gone into the street, they've taken the stage, they're in front of others, they're performing, they're doing something altogether different. You have to have the knowledge, but now we're putting the knowledge into play. Go back to that definition. How do we test our skill? We perform, we have performances, we stand in front of others, we get on stage, we play our musical instruments. If you're a politician, you deliver a speech, you're communicating. You now have an audience and you perform. Some interesting elements there though. Performance is your test. It's what you do when you have some mastery of the skill and you want to display it to others. That is the final exam, if you will, for delivering and performing a skill. How do you acquire the skill? It's training. And this is really the essence, again, of where I found success in learning a language, is training. It's the practice. It's the reps required to master a skill. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly over time, and it requires a lot of reps. It's how Major League Baseball players manage to hit a baseball thrown at them at 90 miles per hour. It is insanely quick. The only way someone learns how to master the skill of hitting a baseball is through repetitions over time, training. It's not through study. Do you have to have some knowledge of what you're doing and the mechanics and how you go about it and look at tapes and understand? Yes, it's a prerequisite, but it's table stakes. But the way that you acquire and master a skill is through training. Okay, so to pull all this stuff together, hopefully you see that this thing called speaking, if you think of it as a skill, it fundamentally shifts the way you address the challenges. You can't simply study a book, nor, equally as bad, is getting on stage before you're ready. Equally as bad as getting on stage before you're ready. Hopefully I'm stating the obvious there, but again, people don't think about that. They say, how do you learn how to speak? You talk to others. That's called performance. It doesn't work. You must train for the performance. You must prepare yourself for the performance. That's the final exam after a long period of time of training to getting yourself ready for the performance. Training is the answer, if you will. It's because you're addressing a skill and you're trying to master that skill. That is the essence of what is required to address the unique challenges of speaking as a skill. So, thank you for your time today. And don't forget our website dedicated to all things speaking Spanish, calistanmethod.com.